Something I saw at Meet Magento Poland this year, that there is like a really growing number of merchants who have their own in-house development teams. This is
Yep.
something that we already talked, that working with open source is way cheaper because of
Yeah.
the whole situation in the IT market. There are a lot of good specialists who are available for work for, I would say, half of the money that it used to be. So it opens a lot of new possibilities, and of course Magento is way more mature, so that's like it's still complex platform, but definitely way more stable than it used to be a few years ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
How was the vibe? The vibe from Meet Magento Poland looked really good.
yeah, like it reminded me the early editions, and
That's
I
so
think
cool.
it was mostly because I really made it very clear that it's a tech event, and
Yeah.
I invited it was a very clear message. We invite people who work with this technology and who wants to learn more. We will not have like a typical business case studies. When we cover some topic, we want to talk about
Yeah.
more about technology. So only one stage, no business and technology, just stage about technology and processes. And that was great. Like, we had full room all day. That was amazing. But in the same time, we had 250 people. And I think this is the right number for Poland, and even gathering some people from outside of Poland. This is
Yeah.
just the right number, because
Yeah.
Magento has its space.
Yeah.
If it's like slowly growing or staying in the same, this is the right number of specialists for Poland. We will not gather like 600 or 700 people. It doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
for 250, it's just perfect. There's a
Yeah.
great opportunity for networking, for learning, for workshops, for anything. So this, I usually try to be, more distanced. I'm an organizer, so I shouldn't be, like so proud of my own event. But this time, I think it was like the perfect balance. So I like it, and I want to do it this way because I see the future of Meet Magento just like that, like a more
Yeah.
relaxed
Yeah.
but highly professional event, a place
Yeah.
where developers from agencies and developers from in-house teams, they can meet and exchange knowledge, because those people who work with one project for years, they need also some space to learn something
Yeah.
new from different stores. So anyway, it was good, and like I hope that you will visit next year.
Yeah.
i I
I
started
did.
building a budget, because I definitely need a real benchmarks, not like the cardboard one. I still have
Yeah.
it. I even
I
had an idea. I will put it behind me, but at some point, like, no, that's cringe.
as
Like,
I've
I don't want to do that.
as I've interviewed with different companies in the last year, and my God, I feel sorry for anyone who's in the friggin' job market. It's been brutal. But and you start to like, I have to sort of describe sort of the things like, because I'm not one to brag about myself. Like it's against my nature, but it's sort of like, well,
Yeah.
how do I have to talk about the realities of things that happened? Like, well, yeah, there were t-shirts and stickers, and there is a cardboard cutout of me somewhere, like life size, full in Poland. Uh,
But this is like the idea has like a new version. Like, I don't know if you saw Coliber team, they have even more cardboard Colibers there. So
oh my
like,
gosh.
there is only one band, but there is way more orange people there.
Oh
So
wow, that's I
it's
remember, and there was what was it, uh Slava. He came to me once, like he was like, and he showed me there was a bobblehead. There was actually a Ben Marks bobblehead, and I think I just said like, no, just please, no, 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 just let's not do that.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, there was at some point it was like, you open your fridge, oh, Ben Marks is there. So like,
yeah,
but that's actually, we skipped that part, that we haven't introduced you, and at some point at the
you're
beginning
gonna have
we
to slice
should.
this in somehow. Yeah, okay. By the way,
Yeah, like we
I'm
have.
Ben Marks.
Yeah, you are dead, Ben Marks. I
Yeah,
actually
that.
found your first one of the first posts on Reddit 12 years ago, and your
Yep.
nickname was Dead Ben Marks, and it was, your words were the best, like, because you are true legend of that word, that long-time Magento developer, educator, and community member, and finally hired by eBay to be the official Magento evangelist. And for me, you and Sherry, you are you are the founders of the community. Like, Roy and Yoav may be founders of Magento, but
Yeah.
you are founders. You both of you are founders of the community.
Yeah, Sherry is fully capable of speaking for herself, and Sherry, I was always happy to, gosh, working with Sherry was the best because, like because we've all worked together. I've said this more than once about Sherry. It's just you know, meeting many of the meetings I was in with Sherry, there was were fundamentally different because Sherry was there, right? Because of her contemplative nature and because of how she saw things, and the analysis and initiatives that she would bring into the meetings were always just genius. Um, but I will try and I will guess what she might say in response to that, because I think we would share the same response, which is that you know, we were brought in to manage something that existed. And we both, we always, whenever we said, manager, like we were always tongue in cheek, because there's really no managing. There's like the interacting with it. But because the cool thing was, because Magento, because the way Magento, Roy and Yoav, they intentionally set Magento up, and pushed it out and made it open source and let people organize naturally around it. It always had the local flavor. So the Germans, organized it their way, the Dutch their way, in Poland, um, and we were lucky enough to be just nerve center for it, and trusted and empowered to like help, the things that the company would say actually, work and be close to the people who were actually taking the product and the services, and seeing if it was actually living up to what was being promised. And then we were able to go back and, occasionally would say, hey, this is we're deviating from what we're promising, or this is really important, we don't see this acknowledged here. And the company did a pretty good job most of the time of listening to us. So I think we would say, I don't know that we would use the word founders about ourselves, but certainly it was, man, it was a moment in time.
Like for me, like I came to my first Imagine in LA, and
Yeah,
I was like I knew no one. I just started working with that,
yeah,
and actually it was Sherry who tweeted something about it, and like she was the first person I met in the whole
yeah,
community. So that was
yep,
that was something that I will always remember, and it somehow shaped how I think
yep,
about the community, about helping each others here. But I don't know how much you can and want to talk about Shopware.
yeah,
You spend some time there. Like for me, like looking from the agency perspective, because I will be honest, I was considering Shopware as
yep,
an alternative, and I think that at some point they just made a big mistake trying to be another Magento with the same pros and cons, with all the same mistakes, just exactly the same, instead of
yeah.
building its own path. Well, what is it,
Well,
like just my perception, or
well, I'll say I'll start with a caveat, which is that my editorial discretion in this area is uh, limited, for reasons that can't be
Mhm.
confirmed or denied. But I mean, I'm a big fan of I still chat regularly with the U.S. team, especially because I think the U.S. was my baby. I'm the one who got Shopware USA started, um, got up and running. I mean, the obviously the founders and the exec team and the board, they found Jason, who runs the U.S. team, and got everything staffed up by the time I left earlier this year. When I first, I was a known quantity of Shopware for a very long time. I had visited them at their community day, kind of their little version of Imagine, back in 2016. I'd actually just accidentally sat down next to one of the co-founders, the two brothers, founded it. Had no idea. I was like, "Hey, what do you do for Shopware?" He's like, "I'm founder." And the bad thing was I had studied. Like I'd like to study, so I know who the key figures are especially when I'm going into a new world. And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, now I recognize you." Um, but we joined, with the goal of ideally getting Shopware up and running in the US. It was way harder, way more time, money, energy than any of us really would have thought. Although it turns out basically market entry takes about 3 years. We've heard this from countless businesses now, just without prompting. Um, when I first joined, I mean, there was a slide internally that was really focused on like killing Magento. I mean, not exactly like that, but I'm like, this seems like unnatural. And I remember when we were at a partner day just after the Adobe acquisition in the UK, and there was a little bicycle like outside of the partner meeting, just leaning up against like a street post, or maybe it was on a stand, but and it had like little fairy lights on it, and it was basically like, if we're always here for you, or some cute little thing. I mean, it was cute, but I'm like, this was the engagement back then. And it just, I think it showed like Shopware has very humble beginnings. I mean, it was just two teenage brothers back in 2000 started a tech services company. One's kind of the designer, messaging person, marketing person, and then the other's the tech guy. And and then they built an e-commerce store for somebody, and then and then that more people wanted it, and that was the origin story. So I think, as they became bigger and bigger, and then as once investment came in, which was a good step, it allowed them to really take on a true international perspective. So I mean, and by the time I arrived, and this was 2021, they converted the company, because this is a small town like Nordrhein-Westfalen. This is English wasn't as penetrated there, as
Yeah,
it was,
I've
in like
never been there,
Berlin.
but I heard. Yeah.
It takes forever to get there, man. It's like you land somewhere, either Frankfurt or Amsterdam, you're still 3 hours. You're still like a solid like three-hour train ride and like hour-long taxi or bus ride to the office. Um, but they had already undertaken the work of converting the company to English first. They were taking the steps that they needed to take, and probably would have been better if they had taken those steps earlier, like a few years earlier. But who knew what was going to unfold? But by the end of it, I think, look, they don't. It's been a long time since I've really heard, since I'd heard Magento's name really bandied about, in when I was at Shopware. I think probably the biggest, and most practical reality there is for the B2B, which I think is, B2B is where something like Shopware shines. Certainly something like Magento shines. And I think it's important for Shopware to have feature parity, or close to it, with B2B functionality. And the B2B story there, the reality was when Shopware 6 came out, back in like 2019 ish, in order to get it out at that time, by that time, they basically took the Shopware 5 B2B module and just sort of ported it into Shopware 6. So it was sort of the Shopware 5, idiom of development and approach,
Magento way.
inside. I mean, anyone that's worked in software products was like, oh yeah, yep, you've got to get it out the door, and this is the thing, and that was the fastest path to that release date. I wasn't there at the time, so if someone from Shopware talks about it, they'll know more than I do. But that's just been my impression. And so it was a little bit tough with B2B, because if you were really good at Shopware 6, and you're, in general, then when you go into the B2B stuff, it's like it's different. And Shopware over the last few years has spent a lot of time and money, like basically making sure that B2B components written in the Shopware 6 style were more and more plentiful. I haven't looked at the code at all, really this year, so I don't know what their progress is like. But I know, last I remember, it was a huge priority, and I think it's the right priority for them. But again, the main point is, it's really good that Shopware. I think Shopware very quickly, shortly after I joined, really had its own sense of identity, completely independent of Magento, right? Because it's its own thing. And I think, for the record, Shopware did something really smart, which was kind of wait for Magento 2 to come out and see what that was like, because they built Shopware 6 from scratch, and they didn't make a lot of the dumb decisions that we made at Magento, namely trying to make every single thing at every single layer dependency injectable. Because you don't need, there's not a lot of, there's really hardly any time that you need to change how routing works, or just these core framework level concerns. It doesn't matter. And you know what, they based it on Symfony. Symfony has a great eventing framework. We'll just use Symfonies, and we'll just kind of bubble it up to the top. So there's just a lot less complexity in there. And that was, that was a good lesson that we learned as I started talking to agencies that did both Shopware and Magento. Um, that agencies would tell us, and these not just agencies trying to make us happy. Agencies would tell us, like, matter of fact, generally, it's generally faster to build something in Shopware, and our developers learn Shopware more quickly than they learn Magento. Right? That was just the reality.
But it's
So that was
interesting
good.
that looks like the estimations in general at some point they equalized. Like
Really?
when I'm looking at different like offering for even when we are competing with someone for a
Yeah.
project, and Shopware is not that much faster and cheaper anymore. Yeah, so maybe it's just something changed. But anyway, uh, I think it looks like it's going a little bit the Oro commerce way, like finding the B2B sector as a
Well, I mean,
specialization.
Oro was always B2B, folks. I mean, that's
Yeah.
cool there. I keep in touch with my buddy over there, Aaron Sheehan, fantastic person. Has the just bright analytical mind. And they were the play there was always for B2B. I mean, that was why they did Oro CRM, to like get the
Mhm.
B2B customers. And then, once the unlock was there from Yoav's time after eBay, drop the suite, and you still got Dima there. They've got Jari Carter back. So I think it's a really cool application. They've got some really cool customers. They were very smart to get into payments this year. I was very happy. That was Aaron's project. I was very happy for him to do that. I think, I think every e-commerce platform has to get into payments. I mean, that's look at where Shopify is today,
Yeah.
and really the only money left is going to be. And I think that means actually getting beyond rev share with PSPs. It has to be like, what kind of integrated, like, vertical sort of, payment delivery option are we um, are we are we
Yeah,
are we building into this?
that's actually a big question for me. Why Adobe is not using Magento open source as a tool to use like Adobe payments for like a mass users? That could be like that's how it all started with PayPal going to the mass client with Magento.
Yeah, I mean, that was the origin story for why eBay even became aware of Magento was, someone in PayPal was like, looking at, like BN codes, going like, wait, what the hell is this Magento thing? And then they look under the hood and like, oh my gosh, this thing that we had no idea about is stuffing tons of TPV through our pipes. Made sense to go out and acquire it. But yeah, the problem, well, so it was a matter of distribution, right? But now you have a situation where, like, this year, I was at PayPal Dev Days earlier this year in San Jose, and they were talking about, oh yeah, we're going to have catalogs going to be built into PayPal. Like, well, okay, so they're now increasing their scope, and and now with agentic, does it even matter if you have an e-commerce site? I mean, obviously it does, at least for the foreseeable future, um, but I think, PayPal, the payment companies are the ones with the real power here. And that it's still a rev share, as far as I know, it's still a rev share agreement. I know the dollar value when when of that agreement that created Magento payments. Um, it has expanded since then. But it's still, I mean, it's not even a drop in the bucket in terms of like Adobe's normal revenue. I mean, it's a good chunk of change that would really help, Magento be self-sustaining. Um, but they don't really, I think basically anything Magento open source is just a damn long tail, and the numbers involved, any kind of optimization or tuning, relative to what Adobe is getting out of AEM bills. So just even looking at the digital experience business, that silo of Adobe,
Yeah,
it's not enough money to really be interesting.
yeah,
Again,
that's
I
un-
that
that's
that's and that's the
unbelievable.
I mean, if
A
you were able to
small part of
firewall,
merchants, yeah, like small parts of merchants are actually bringing like a way bigger revenue than all of those like
uh, you know,
small
I,
deals.
You know what would make me super happy would be if Adobe said tomorrow, like, you know what? We've taken this Magento thing as far as we can. There's still value there, but not enough value for us. And so we're gonna give Magento like to Magento Association, and we're gonna come up with some agreement around the rev share that's there, and figure out licensing and all this other stuff. But we're basically going to turn it over and let the funds that exist there sort of help it continue on its way, and we'll go our own way with Adobe Commerce. Now, again, I would never expect them to do this, certainly on their own, unprompted, because again, someone at some point, someone on the board or Shantanu or immediately below that level has to be the one that says, yes, I think we can give up this $1.7 billion brand that we bought. And
Yeah.
I am not sufficiently enough of a business person to
Yeah, like
understand what that
of
looks
course
like.
we can explain it because they paid actually for the commerce component. It's more
Yeah,
like a virtual thing to buy
yeah,
a commerce mindset. And that was something that was worth the money, not the
mm,
technology itself.
yeah,
It was just, that Adobe, after the acquiring Magento, they could say we are the commerce company too now. We have
yep,
commerce. So,
yep.
and that was the value that they. So I totally agree. I think that
And
letting
we were,
letting go Magento and giving its freedom, it would be the best. Like, because right
and
now nobody knows how to promote Adobe Commerce or Magento. Is it the
yeah,
same or not anymore? Like, I think it is
yeah,
going different ways. Like, for me, it's
absolutely,
back to roots. It's Magento open source. Like, Meet
yeah,
Magento is about Magento. It's about open source, and I think that's fine. So maybe it will
yeah.
become in some natural way. Like, and
It's Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, like, because when we are talking about open source, like, I'm a big fan of Polish Sylius. What do you think about it? They have a
Serious?
very interesting approach. They want to be independent. They want to be like
Yeah.
developers focused, and I'm a big fan. But I also, like,
Yep.
I'm worried if this developer centric approach can really survive in the business world.
So yeah, so I've been to Celia's Con. I mean, the people there, folks there are great. The community around it's great. A lot of Magento folk in that space as well. And on paper, it is great. It's really componentized and very developer centric. But like all those years I spent wearing like Magento shirts, especially to not Magento events, but like PHP or other conferences, like I get so many people so mad at me that Magento succeeded because they're like, well, what about this platform over here? And it's da da da, it's PSR, everything, it's perfect, it's brilliant, and it's not bloated. And I'm like, well, because at the end of the day, developers aren't buying this stuff. I mean, I'm glad to see that there is, I think, more tech team input into decisions, but it was always like the marketing or board members like go out playing golf, and then so like, have you heard of Magento? Like, no, that's the best thing in the world. We're using it over here. Great, and then they come back like, guess what? We're going to use Magento, and the whole tech team. This literally happened in one of my classes. Oh, they're like the tech team had been in the company for like over 17 years, right? At this big US brand. And they were a Java entirely, they were all Java. But no, someone from marketing was like, no, we're going to use Magento. So they had to like bring PHP into the stack. And I was able to win them over though, because I pointed out that like, oh, this application is all it's all Java, it's all J2EE. It's just written in PHP.
What I wanted to say is that this is the same. Like, when I think it was in 2006, I was at the time developing a lot of stuff in PHP by myself,
Yep.
and I started working with Cake PHP at the time
Yep.
because I was, this a developer that wants to create a pretty code and like the best state of the art code. And I was at that time already discussed it with WordPress bloated code. And the funny thing is that after all those years, WordPress is powering 45% of the internet, and actually is one of the foundation of PHP and is bringing money to a huge amount of people, and it's
Mhm.
growing. It's still growing. So that, like, at some point, I think we should think about it. That
Look,
it's
I mean,
like
I
a,
just I just started publishing. I mean, it's not even really ready, but I just started publishing the Convisory website. And it's a WordPress blog. I mean, I figured I would have used Wix, but I'm like, probably should use PHP for this.
Yeah,
But
but
but no, it's super easy. And I've had other PHP blogs that it's great. Like on DreamHost, like it's all self managed. I just get an email. It's like, oh, you're on the latest and greatest. It's already updated. Completely. It's like the perfect balance of like the open source, but the infrastructure and the upgrades are all handled just seamlessly.
yeah, I think like I was playing with it too. Like I use WordPress for a lot of like a small personal projects. I was experimenting with all those no code platforms, but after all, for just creating a simple publishing platform or just something that you need to use to manage content, WordPress is the best. It's really like it just does the job, and you can even
Mhm.
use the basic template they provide, play with it. So that's a little bit back to basic, that I don't even need an AI tool to build it. I just install it and fill with my content what I want to
But
say.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like people aren't building with AI for AI's sake. Well, actually, probably there some are right now. But really, but what will be staying is, what do I want to achieve, and how easily can I achieve it? And the tools and the technologies behind it are immaterial. It's it's goal focused. So however I can get achieve my goal, that's what I'll do. I mean, it's that easy. I mean, I do think we have also. It's an interesting time with like Medusa. So some of these JavaScript offerings that are coming up. Medusa is an interesting
Yeah, they
platform.
are.
That team seems to get it because it's not. They are very their messaging is technical, but it's not overly technical. And so it's clear there's technical investment. Their docs are amazing. They're hiring for developer like developer tech writing and stuff, but they get the business side of it, right? And then you have also like our friends, the Karatka brothers. I think you have Peter Karatka's got Mercado, the open source ERP,
Yeah.
was it ERP? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Piotr
Um,
is working on right now.
yep.
That's like pretty interesting stuff. And like the Medusa concept, I think they also found their niche, like a big piece of the pie. Like they focus on the marketplace, and
Yep.
that's an important part. Like a lot of merchants, they want to go and build a perfect marketplace, and we know
Mhm.
that existing tools are not cheap. So having something that allows you to build a nice lightweight platform for marketplace is a big win.
Yep. It's it is interesting. It is an interesting demonstration that we've these problems are all far from being solved. And hint, they'll never be fully solved. Um, and um, and the dynamics of the market can change at any time from any direction, right? Because you look at the 1,000-pound gorilla like Shopify or Amazon or marketplaces in general, but then TikTok shop. You just look at the things that put pressure for customer retention and impacting customer behavior in aggregate. But then you have this disruption. Disruption is not dead. Disruption is
Yeah,
evergreen,
it
and
still
and it
happens.
can and it comes from all sorts of interesting places. But you know, when as you there's a principle, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? So this is just the status quo for decades, right? But certainly it's the status quo in technology. And I would argue, so kind of bring it back to the Magento community and why like me Magento remains essential, and and what it is that sort of keeps a community integrated. uh, Community is one of the best hedges and mechanisms to counteract these things, this to counteract VUCA, right? Because um, it it allows you to engage all of these emerging forces and competing forces, and um, in a very organic way. I've often described the intersection or the crossover point between like sort of an application or platform and its ecosystem, and then the business, where sort of the business edge where the customer comes in, the merchant comes in. as fractal, right? Because the further you drill in on a fractal, it remains fractal. It just goes on. The edges come into relief, but you just realize you're just in this repeating pattern. Into like I was about to say arbitrary, but arbitrariness. It just goes down. The nuances are forever. But and you can never build for like no one part of that like no one single actor in that equation can have the full solution, can be the full solution. Um, it takes everyone triangulating on that fractal edge, but again, that's where the community really comes together. Is they're the ones that like, oh, I know a lot about. I think about like Snowdog. You guys know a lot about accessibility, and actually and building really for accessibility. It's one of your many strengths. You probably also have experts in certain verticals, certain geographies, and you start combining these, and then you got, okay, well, here are the kinds of, you just start describing specific ICP, or specific members of an ICP, and you then repeat that over a large enough ecosystem, and guess what, you've got a solution that is broadly applicable and continues to matter and continues to sort of exist despite the changing economy and world and business environment around it. Probably getting a little too philosophical here, but like that's why I think that's one of the things that I think has made the Magento ecosystem such a powerful um, component of the Magento success story, and something that I think actually keeps itself sustaining. Because I think what part of what keeps Magento people in the Magento ecosystem is the fact that like there's comfort in the familiar, and there's sort of this comfort in this precedent. Like, yeah, we've always been able to solve these problems.
Hmm. Yeah, and when we're talking about solving problems, before we end today, tell something about Convisory, and what's, because
Well,
like you are on your own right now and sharing your broad experience. So like let's use that moment also to let
yeah,
others know.
Yeah, Convisory is my consulting brand for basically offering what it is I've been doing for all these years. Now, what is that? Well, really serving as a nerve center. Topics that we've talked about today, having the sort of the technical acumen, the interpersonal sort of skills, and just the experience to be able to help help founders or even existing companies, you know, start to develop either develop or hone their community or their ecosystem engagement. And people use ecosystem and community interchangeably, but I would just say like the ecosystem is essentially the operating environment that the business defines and describes, but community is what happens when you start really coalescing the people and the businesses within that ecosystem, and they start going beyond just mere transaction or sort of one way utility. There starts being an interaction, and you have to figure out, it's really hard to measure success when it comes to community strategy. So you really want to work with somebody who understands the metrics that matter and can help translate those and adapt those, because it's different for every business, what you track, how you track, and how you engage, and how you sort of look for the people and the processes that will lead to success, and then ensuring that those happen. I mean, there are general rules there that come to bear. um, I think it's, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you're going to any business can invest in community for about a year to two, but eventually whoever was interested in that, and sort of puts this like mandate out across the company, like, hey, we're going to focus on our community, unless or until there is someone there who is actually responsible, or accountable, responsible, and empowered to advocate for these programs, and it stretches into education and certification as well. It will always die a heat death, and so and I've seen that happen time and again at organizations all over. But if I could hand out one bit of free advice, I think one of the things that businesses get wrong here is they look at inbound connections, so the many to one, But what they really want to look at is the many, many, and measures the many, many connections. So how are my community members interacting with each other? How often are they doing that? And how much are we facilitating that? And how much are we also paying attention, right? We don't need to control the conversation that they have, or the interaction that they have, but we certainly want to be aware of it, because we do want to be able to step in if, rumors start flying, or the wrong impression is being given. We need to be aware of that as soon as possible and make sure that we're basically fully participating in the conversation. So helping businesses curate the space for the conversation, and then being able to be part of those conversations, whether it's listening or speaking. That's what it's all about.
That's great. So I will definitely drop the URL of Convisory in the podcast. So after all, I hope that we'll have some audience that will listen to us, and if not, at least they will look at the description and we'll find the URL there. So there is always something out of it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, that's really the only reason I came here, was just to promote my brand. I hate talking about this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, like also that's the thing. I also hate talking to people, but
Yeah.
like what we have to do that. We have to do it. There's no other choice. So,
No, it's
uh,
good. I appreciate the chance to be on, and I regret that I couldn't be there. It was going to take 30 hours to get there from the Philippines, and it cost
yeah,
way too
that's
much
like
money.
that's the I totally understand. That's like right now, like I'm getting older, and I really understand the value of time. And like
Yeah.
it's like sometimes it was cool just to fly to, I don't know, LA for 2 days. Right now,
Yeah.
like it's a big waste of time. So it's like I really to have a solid reason to go there, and it's not nice anymore. Yes, like actually, I was so impressed how you dealt with all those time zones and flying all over the world. Like every day
You
in a
know,
different time zone. That was hard.
it was funny because obviously 2020, I didn't go anywhere. Like, my last trip was to meet Magento India, that January. Came back, no problem. And then I didn't go anywhere for like a year. And so I started flying back and forth to Europe, because Shopware's in Germany. And I noticed something right away. I was like, wow, like, getting there wasn't too bad, but coming back, I'd be kind of out of it. The mornings were rougher than they used to be. And then, because, yeah, 300 days a year on the road, like literally worldwide. 2 days in Asia, a day in the UK, and then 2 days in Australia. Like, it was never a problem. My body just gave up. Now I'm probably going to die like way earlier than I should have otherwise for doing this, because I did it for so many years. But like, coming back from the Philippines, because we were over in Asia for like 3 weeks, and for about a week and a half, almost 10 days, I I was starting to get sleepy at 3 p.m., and I never take naps, and I was asleep by 5, asleep, asleep, out. And then wake up, and then out at 9, and sleep, for like 10 hours. It is definitely a young person's game. I don't know how these consultants who've been doing it for so many years continue to rack up, their 4 millionth mile or something. I've only got 3.
Thank you
I
very
will.
much. Have a great day, and say hello to Tracy.
I will, my friend. Take care.
Cheers.